Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Elvenhome, and we'll get straight into the video. So there's quite a bit to talk you through as lots of things have come together in my mind, and I've started laying out how the whole of that far end of the layout's going to go. So first of all, let's go on to my most recent acquisitions. I thought I would start this discussion about the changes that I'm going to be making at the far end of the layout first by showing my newest acquisition, which is a rake of Mark I suburban coaches just recently issued by Graham Farish. They've been in the catalogue a good while, and like many things got caught up with the production problems in China. But here they are, hurrah. I've realised, having got 4 of them, I should have got 5. There's something about odd numbers that just seems to work, because I've got 2 brakes, second class brakes, first and fourth, a second class compartment, and then a composite compartment, and another second class compartment here would balance the train. That may be me being OCD, but nonetheless. And I think as soon as I can get trains running, and you'll see why I can't just at the moment, that will make a nice suburban service that I can have trotting around whilst the expresses are belting around on another line. By the power of Final Cut Pro, let's go down the other end. And just like that, it's done. I have been wrestling with what to do down this end, as you know, for quite some time. Can I just, before I do anything more, say thank you to everybody for the tremendous number of really useful suggestions and comments that were made in response to the last video. I think you'll see that they've all been taken into account one way or another, because I think what I'm going to do here has undergone some change, but nothing too drastic. There is quite a lot to talk through, so what I'm probably going to do is intersperse this with 1 or 2 other things as we go along, just to break up you looking at this and just hearing me chatter. So first of all, this now is where the gasworks is going to be, and I will cut in a bit to a discussion of how I'm going to be augmenting the gasworks beyond what I already have. I have quite a few of the things that would be in the gasworks, but I've come across something that's given me a really useful source for more things that need to be there for the gasworks. But at this area of the layout, it is going to be obviously at the same height as here. And this point, which was always intended to take the lines into the brewery, more of which in a moment, will come back into play, because the right-hand branch, which I may bring up a little bit further this way, will take trains into the gasworks. In terms of operationally how that will work, let me just move you back. Trains will come in on this line. This is the entrance to the depot there, but obviously it goes further back because that's where the Mark 1s are stabled at the moment. The engine will be able to disconnect, and the shunting engine for here will be able to go back into a head shunt that's right just before the tunnel entrance, which would allow the shunting of wagons and goodness knows what in and out, and then the locomotive to hook up and take them away. As I said, there's more I'm going to do on the gasworks, and I'll come on to that once I finish talking about this section. The next thing is you will see that the brewery has been rescued. That was a particular request in the last after the last video. And at the moment I'm playing with the idea of having it rail served, because I think I've got space to do that. All of the gasworks can actually come out a bit further to make space for where the coal will be and 1 or 2 other things that I'm going to be putting in there. And I can run an access road off the back here because of what I'll be doing with that landform, which I'll come on to in a bit. But I think it would be quite nice to have the brewery back, and that makes a quite nice industrial area now that's beginning to form at this end of the layout. From the back of the brewery, it will fall down to where the canal is. And that's the bit that I'm going to talk about next. As you know, I've wanted to have a gasworks on my layout, and I acquired various bits and pieces to create a gasworks. But I always knew that there were some things that I wasn't including. And whilst I was idly Googling, which is a terrible habit because you come across things, but one of the useful things I came across was this website, which is on a blog. Now, I will put a link in the video description to this website. Apple gets terribly sniffy or Google or Safari, whichever it is, gets terribly sniffy when I go to this website because it's not one of those with a little padlock to show it's an absolutely secure site. I think it's just somebody's blog. I don't think it's full of evil things, and certainly there's not ads and things popping up every 5 minutes. But it was very useful because it's obviously by some professional modeller of a commission that he was given to build a model gasworks. And what it does is it sets out how a gasworks would be laid out and the various things that you would find in the gasworks. And then if I zoom you back out again, there we go. Over the next parts of the description, he goes through how they went about building it, not what they did, because obviously they were using various materials. But I am pretty sure that PD Marsh, for example, they're very good at doing things like pipework and storage silos. So I suspect that when I go to Whalley, which is now just a bit, 2.5 months away, well, nearly 3. But when we go to Whalley, I'll go and have a look at Paul's stand, because I think I'll be able to acquire the other bits I need to develop the site of the gasworks. So it's got more than the few things that I've got. I think I will now have a coal arriving siding. The coal stacks, that's fine. I've got the retort house. I've got an exhauster house. I don't have a separate boiler house because the model that's done from Hornby, it puts together the boiler house and the retort house. Rather strange me. I've got a condenser. I've got a tower scrubber, but oh no, I've got a washer. Sorry, not a tower, not a condenser, which is over here. And there are other bits and pieces here, and obviously I've got a couple of gas holders. Although again, I may replace one of them. I'll see. I may have a look at End Scenics and get a newer kit, because when Tom sent me the one that's there, he made adjustments to it after I'd built it. So I may go and buy another kit of those. So I've got 2 fairly similar looking ones, but I'll see. But the main thing about this is that this is an incredibly useful document. And I think once I've got the High Elven in place, and I can then start work on developing further the gasworks. So with that, let us back to the layout. You'll recall that it is my intention to have a canal on the layout. And following comments from 2 or 3 videos ago, I started to make some changes to the positioning of a lock and how the canal would come onto the layout and leave, with the intention that it would emerge through a tunnel from this part of the layout, come along. The black card is just to give an idea of where the canal may actually be, turn through there, and then carry on to go out through a tunnel at the far side there. The more I thought about that, the more I became dissatisfied with it. One of them to do with the scale of the lock kit that I bought. And I will, after this, show you my 3 barges that I have bought, all of which are a different size. And I would be interested in your view about whether they're all supposed to be 1 to 1/4/8 scale, but whether in fact they are. So I will come on to that after I've completed here. So the canal will indeed now carry on as intended and go through the viaduct. Over there you can see a kind of T-shaped piece of paper. That is borrowed from the map that you saw last time of the basins that were at the end of the Union Canal, where they terminated in Edinburgh. And using the measurement tools that are on the National Library of Scotland's map georeference site, I'll put an image up here showing you the distances. I was able to get what the measurement was of Port Hamilton. I think it's Port Hamilton. I always confuse the two, but I think it was Port Hamilton, which was really helpful in giving me an idea of just how big were those basins. One of the things that troubled me last time round was how easily it would be to steer a narrowboat. And I've been watching lots of videos on how to steer a narrowboat. And something I didn't realise is that a narrowboat pivots from its centre. And so actually some of the sharp left and right hand turns are not as difficult to do as I assumed they would be. So what I have done is added a basin, which is a sharp left-hand turn after you come round the curve, which is not a million miles away, of course, from what you can see on here, although that was coming round a right-hand bend before making a sharp left turn. And there will be enough space, well, depending which barge I go with, and you'll see that in just a moment. So what I'm going to do now is that the white T has drawn on it the same shape as the Port Hamilton basin. And I am, I think, going to put this mill building, which is one of the early Metcalfe things that I made. I want to see if I can buy some of the joists, not joists, yes, do I mean joists? No, I don't. But the cranes that you can swing over a door to allow things to be hauled up and down, because I think that would look quite good. How much space I have there will be partly dictated once I've got the road in place that's going to go behind it, and I'll explain that again a bit later on. But the aim will be that the canal is not going to be very high at all, because I think what I'm going to use is the woodland scenic water effect, which you paint onto a baseboard to give you an effect of a water feature without having to pour lots of liquid. That looks really quite impressive, and I've seen that used in a couple of places and it seems to work quite well. So I don't need to raise the canal up very high, but rather raise what's around it up a little bit. And that, I think, will then also mean that the area around here will have another industrial building that's right on the side of the canal before it gets to the basin, with pathways now connecting through these between the two sides to allow vehicles probably, but again that will depend how I'm able to get road access in there, which I'll only know when I really start laying this out. But that has given me, I think, and the canal will end obviously roughly where you can see one of the woodland scenic risers running at the back there. That's probably going to go back a little bit. That will be the end of the canal there. I may probably put a winding hole into an barges just to turn without going into the basin. How high up the bank is to here, I've not yet made my mind. I want it to fall down, because the idea is that the landform here came down from High Elven to leave a basin here before it moved up again on the area on which Weathertop has been built. And the natural basin encouraged them to put a canal in because it didn't have to go up and down hills. And it not going up and down hills is one of the reasons why I may not use the lock, because I don't really need it now. And also I've got a feeling it's over scale. And that brings me on to the discussion that I mentioned a bit earlier about the scale of the Canal barges that I've bought. As some of you will know from my reply to your comments after the last video, I've begun to have second thoughts about the need for the lock, and most particularly the need for this lock, because I've begun to wonder whether it was over scale. Now, this was a 3D printed kit, and this barge is from the same people as make this, and the barge to this is about right. It looks in scale. But as you'll see, the lock is stands really quite high from the floor. And that would require me to raise the canal a bit to bring, and the walls coming from it, and how I set this in and put the landform around it, which partly, given the changes that I've now made, this would just look wrong. It just would be this great big huge thing. But I did wonder whether it was over scale, because this is a locomotive, a coronation class locomotive that is about 73 foot long overall. And this barge is not far off being the same length, which I think is a tad long for a barge. It's also really quite wide. It's about 9 foot wide in scale size, which again is a bit wide from what everything I've read online. And that made me, the other thing is that I bought this from N-Scale Models, who I really like, and I really like this barge. This though is, I think, only about 40 foot scale size. But if it's meant to be a full-size barge, that looks a bit small. So I thought I would kill two birds with one stone. I would have a go at building a Scalescenes kit, which, as some of you will know, for some reason I've always just not taken to Scalescenes kit, and I'm pleased to say I'm now cured. Although I should say, before anyone looks too closely at this, this was the first go at building these. It may survive on the layout. I may be able to touch it up sufficiently. It's not as good as I'm sure I can do. As I was building this, one of the things I think with the instructions is that they're clear enough, but in some places it wasn't entirely clear. When it said, for example, test and fit, what was I testing and to where? And when I was putting on this wrap here to make the side of the barge, I fitted it flush with the bottom. This was a mistake. I needed to fit it flush with the top, as I discovered when I started putting the gunwales on and found that I had paper protruding above the top. And when you think about it, it makes much more sense to fit it flush to the top, and then you can fold any excess over underneath. But I have to say, I was impressed with the kit as a kit. And now that I've built one, I know how it goes together. And I've also worked out where some things were meant to be flush in one particular direction, but were not flush in another. So I will have a go. You can make 4 different working barges and 4 different recreational barges. Well, you either make them working barges or recreational, but you can make 4 barges out of each kit because there's only 4 bases. But of course you can print off as many of these as you want. And following the example of others, I bought some whole page labels and printed onto the labels, and then stuck the labels onto the paper as necessary. I am impressed with it. It's gone together well. It looks all right, especially from a distance. It needs a bit of TLC in places to get rid of white edges, but I think that could be done. However, back to where I was. So that looks in scale to me. That looks in scale to that, both in terms of its overall size and height. That looks too big. It just looks big, which is not what I was expecting. The beauty of this also is that plainly I'm not sure they've modelled it with the scale depth, possibly, but maybe they have. And I think that would just look better on the layout. This will go in somewhere as a kind of half-size canal barge, because the figure on it is the right scale. I've measured that. So I think I'm just going to treat this as one of the smaller ones. And then there'll be several of these working barges that I can put along the canal. But I would be interested in your views about the relative scale of things. Certainly this looks a great big beefy thing. You would get about 90 meters in there. I think it's 90 feet in there, which is, I think, bigger than any lock in the United Kingdom. And I don't think there's a barge on the canal of that length, unless it's the Manchester Ship Canal, which obviously is intended for ships, not barges. So that's the end of that. Let's go back to the layout now to have a look at how I'm going to try and tie things together, and something I have to do with the viaduct. This is the final section of chat from me today, which really is going to deal with two things. How I'm going to set the viaduct into place, and also how I'm going to join High Elven to Weathertop and provide road access. Taking the viaduct first of all, I discovered a little while ago, and I've been mulling over in my mind what I'm going to do about it, that despite making endless measurements to make sure everything was right, the viaduct is 1/8 of an inch too tall. Now, 1/8 of an inch probably wouldn't cause a problem. It's a slight gradient going up. I think about 1%. I don't think it's more than that. But it wasn't intended to be a gradient there, and a gradient up and round a curve, the Farish Castle gets sniffy if it goes over the bump of an insulated joiner, let alone having to go up any kind of hill. And part of the reason of putting in a new viaduct was to ease the curves, to stop some of the trains struggling as they made the turn. So what I think I'm going to do, which I'll start work on later this week, is set the viaduct down into the baseboard by 1/8 of an inch. I've got the Dremel router, which I used up on High Elven to set in the inspection pit. So I think I will mark where I need to Dremel out, and that will also actually have the advantage of setting the viaduct into the baseboard and getting rid of one of the big problems that you have with many models when you put them on the layout, of how you set them in so they don't look as though they've just been plonked on, that they do actually have foundations on which they're built. So the viaduct has got to come out anyway, because there's some work I need to do to finish it. I need to put some wall in the area where the lock would have been. You can see the white patch under the canal tunnel. So that needs to be completed, and I need to put on the downpipes, all of which now need to be cut down by 1/8 of an inch, but that won't be difficult to do. And so that, I think, will help with making sure that's nice and level, rather than it going up and down a hill, which I don't think I really need it to do. Now, how do we tie the road, and how do we get a road up to High Elven and tie it in? Well, the risers that you can see at the back, these were left over from when I built the big incline. And what my intention is that the road will come off the back here, as you can see. It will probably bend back a bit further and then climb all the way up to join High Elven about, get my hand in view, here. That, I think, will be something like, well, from the baseboard, right from the bottom here up to here, over the distance that I'm going, is something like a 1/7 hill, which is quite a decent hill, and indeed is so steep that it doesn't allow large movement of goods from High Elven down to Weathertop, which is why first the canal and then the railways were built to do that work, because they could move that stuff more easily than horses and carts. That's my explanation for it, and I'm sticking with it. But I think the other thing is that building this section here, and I've not yet worked out how I'm going to do it, so if any of you have got any ideas, I'd be pleased to hear them. I think what I want to do is to build this section here so that's fixed, and that will probably have the portals for the tunnels in it, and that this bit will be able to be lifted off if needs be. It will be screwed into position, and it needs to be supported more where two boards join from where I've cut it back. But I can do that. That's not so much of a problem, because I might need to get under here, and it will be easier if I can just either lift this up. That's an idea. Yes, that is an idea, actually. It's amazing what comes to you. If I got a piano hinge for that end, this could just be lifted up. Well, there you are. Thoughts come to you at the most amazing times. But anyway, that would be the idea, that this would be movable, whereas this would be fixed. And that would have the road coming up and then turning to go off to through the corner. I think that's all doable. I think I can do that. And it will be... I'll choose where the railway goes into a tunnel over, let me point you in the right direction, over here, because most of that from where you see the brick wall ending is going to be filled in now. Obviously I need to put something in to take the railway across, but I think I will probably, depending how I sort the rocks coming across there, have the tunnel portal just a bit before where you see the board ending now, because that whole area will need to be reconfigured a bit to get it how I want it to be. That's really everything that I have in mind, and I've settled in my mind. I like where things are. I've not done as much in actually making it happen this since the last video, because I've been putting things on the layout, then taking them off and then putting them back on again. But I think I'm getting pretty close now, so I can actually start work on all of this, because I want to get the tracks all in and tested before I start building the other things. I think the layout of High Elven similarly will be very similar to what was there before, but I might simplify it. We'll see. Lots in this video. If you've got any comments, please do let me have them, particularly about how you would go about building the front section here, because I really enjoy all the comments and they're just so helpful. They've been incredibly helpful in getting me to where I am now and the changes that I've made since the last time I spoke to you. If you've liked the video, well, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe, because it'd be great to have you along. But until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.